Content note: this video discusses why women, particularly cishet white women, join conservative movements and therefore talks about their beliefs. These include transphobia, homophobia, racism, and misogyny. Please proceed with caution.
We can make a difference here.
I will make a difference here.
You alone? Because I thought together...
Oh, please, don't be naive. You can be in charge of the women.
So I always think of this scene from The Office when I think about why women, particularly white cishet women, join fascist movements, and more specifically the alt-right here in the US. In the episode, Dwight is promised to become manager, but he only went for it because of Angela. So Angela thinks Dwight will reward her with an equally powerful position. Then Dwight of course shoots her down, but also throws her a bone, which she happily eats up. And of course, she says goodbye Kelly Kapoor at the end, as Kelly is the only woman of color working in the office. However, this line was cut from the series for some reason a few years ago as documented on Reddit. But anyway, women like the uptight conservative Christian Angela join fascist or right-wing politics because of various motivating factors, which I'm going to delve into in this video. And before we begin, this video takes heavily from ContraPoints aka Natalie Wynn's video, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, and Andrea Dworkin's 1983 book, Right-Wing Women. If you haven't checked either of these out yet, I suggest you do so. You should also follow and support trans creators like Jessie Gender, who talks about sci-fi works as well as LGBTQ+ politics, Kat Black, who discusses pop culture as well as trans issues and race, and Aronok, who streams games as well as makes video essays from a non-binary trans perspective. I'd also like to shout out Soul Bunny, who's a trans creator and makes leftist video essays on YouTube, and who's also an artist. Lastly, please note that this video is just my thoughts and opinions. There is no one reason why women join the alt-right, as why people join hate groups is largely emotion-based, not logic or fact-based. So without further ado, let's go. Why do women join the alt-right? Before we talk about the motivating factors of why cishet white women uphold conservative ideology, we need to understand what right-wing politics offer women. Because from an outsider's perspective, it seems pretty ridiculous that women would vote conservatively, as the Republican Party seems to stand on a platform that directly goes against women's best interests. They're against abortion, they shame women for being sluts and whores, they deny women financial and bodily autonomy, and they create very strict definitions of what a woman can be in society and what a woman can be biologically. A woman to conservatives are biological human females. They exist to solely care for the home and the children, to be moral compasses of society, and to serve their husbands. But these are the exact reasons why the right appeals to some women, again mainly cishet white women, so much. As Dworkin states in her book, the right offers women form, shelter, safety, rules, and love. It gives women a purpose, a sense of self, in a society where women live in a world of contradictions. Women experience the world as mystery, kept ignorant of technology, economics, most of the practical skills required to function autonomously. The right offers women a simple, fixed, predetermined social, biological, and sexual order. Form conquers chaos. Form banishes confusion. Form gives ignorance a shape, makes it look like something instead of nothing. The right also validates women's fears, but then they manipulate the fear. The promise is that if a woman is obedient, harm will not befall her. Additionally, the right claims to protect the home and the woman's place in it. And lastly, the right very considerately tells women the rules of the game on which their lives depend. The right also promises that, despite their absolute sovereignty, men too will follow specified rules. Liberal politics say women can be anything they want to be, and to some that's freeing and to others that's scary. Since if you choose to be anything other than a wife and mother, you're villainized, and even when you choose to be those things, you're still harassed and mistreated. But for some women, they choose to be a wife and mother because in the end, that's still the safest option. A larger reason why cishet white women are turned off by feminist gender ideology is because it forces them to look in the mirror and question their identity. If a woman can be anything, what does that make me? The liberal definition of a woman is off-putting for these women because they enjoy being victims. If they embrace the left and work to change their status, they can no longer be victims. White cishet conservative women base their own oppression off of their belief in biological sex and strict gender boxes. If we break those, then they have nothing. For how much the right loves saying that the left revels in victimizing themselves, white conservative cishet women love it even more. Not to mention the white cishet women who pretend to still be in the center, but we'll get to them later. These types of women occupy a fascinating space in society in which they are both simultaneously victimizing themselves and also victimizing others, as they are given power under patriarchy, even if the power isn't equal. These women can't find solace in liberal politics because if they do, then they can't continue to be coddled white women. They can't continue to romanticize the past and talk about how traditional home life and femininity was stolen from them by nasty feminists. If they were to join the left, they'd have to own up to their privilege, just like the white nerds in my other video, but they can't bring themselves to do so because then they'd give up the few privileges already afforded to them. They don't want to relinquish the little power they have, so they keep right, where their white womanhood is weaponized against actual marginalized people. And unsurprisingly enough, these cishet white women are totally okay with that. It's why Angela smirks when she can be in charge of the women. They're okay with being subjugated by the patriarchy as long as they get to subjugate others. So the right not only offers a clear answer as to what a woman is, which is especially important for white women who don't have an identity outside of their femaleness, but the right also offers them a chance to have power over others, which the left doesn't offer. To them, liberal politics look weak. The liberals are always playing defense, whereas the right looks as if they're always winning with quippy one-liners and talking points. See the alt-right playbook for more info. The right also claims to be defending the family, moral values, and of course, the children. The domain cishet white conservative women lord over. Because the right says they care so much about the home, it's easier for women to insert themselves in the right's narrative than in leftist politics. As Dworkin writes, right-wing women know that they are valued for their sex organs, and their reproductive capacity, and so they try to up their value through cooperation, manipulation, conformity, through displays of affection or attempts at friendship, through submission and obedience, and especially through the use of euphemism, femininity, total woman, good, maternal instinct, motherly love. This also helps the right appear more woman-friendly, as women are given a bloated sense of power over the domestic, but in reality that power is only given to them by men. Not to mention, basing a woman's power on their biology jeopardizes them further, even cishet white women, because not all of them will be able to live up to these patriarchal expectations. Uplifting biological sex only creates a narrower box for women, but again, it does offer rules which some women are desperate for. In the end, the left doesn't offer a clear answer on what a white woman's identity is outside of the cishet patriarchy, and that's scary for them, so they take the path of least resistance and stick to the status quo. And it's important to note that even though all women have internalized patriarchy to a degree, women also have autonomy to make their own choices. Women who join in on fascist movements know exactly what they're doing, and they do it because they're at the top of the woman hierarchy and want to stay there. They don't just decide to uphold the system that's hurting them because they don't know better, but rather it's the safest option for them as they have the most to gain from right-wing politics compared to marginalized women. Sure, they still lose a lot of their autonomy, but they would never admit that because it would mean admitting that they're also part of the problem. So in the last section, we established what the right offers cishet women and why that's so enticing to them. Right-wing politics give them an out, a way to never have to confront their privileges, as long as they're okay with remaining unequal to men. But they're again okay with that because they get to sit atop the female hierarchy. They get to define womanhood and, in theory, get to control the domestic sphere, the home, the family, and those godforsaken children. Though in reality, that's far from the truth. It may seem hypocritical for white cishet women to both claim victimhood in the patriarchy, but also want to be a part of it, and that's because it is. But a lot of these women don't claim they're being victimized by the right, but rather by the left. And this is where you don't just have right-wing women claiming that their rights and identities are being taken away by feminists, but also white cishet center and liberal women chanting the same thing. So for this to make sense, we have to go back in time to 2016 and talk about the pussy hats. 2016 was an important moment in fourth wave feminism because that's when the rapist-in-chief was elected. Crowds of angry women took to the streets, and one line in particular that Trump said that a lot of women took issue with was, "Grab them by the pussy." And feminists decided to embrace the pussy part of this line and wear pussy hats or pink hats with cat ears on them in order to try to turn the whole thing on its head. And though this was a widespread fashion statement, a lot of leftist feminists took issue with it because not all women have vaginas, so embracing the pussy could be seen as a little off-putting. And this is when the inclusion of trans women and trans men and non-binary people started to become a wedge issue in feminist politics. Though, of course, the inclusion of LGBTQ+ people in feminism has always been a contentious issue, specifically, of course, with white cishet women. But nowadays, trans people are to be included and protected in modern feminism. But a lot of cishet white women back in 2016 who aligned themselves with the feminist movement didn't like this. And that's because, like we've stated in the previous section, conservative women find victimhood in their specific cishet white womanhood, which is fine. Cishet white women also face patriarchal oppression. But also, like I mentioned in the last section, these conservative women don't want to expand the definition of woman because it means that their identity becomes more complicated. They also feel threatened by other definitions of womanhood because they feel it makes them replaceable. Kind of like how in my fembot video I talked about how the discrimination against fembots by human women mimic real-life transphobic remarks by cis women to trans women. You're not a real woman, you're not even human. If men can't transition into women, then where does that leave me? As cis-het white conservative women base not only their victimhood on their gender, but also their power, the only thing that they can do alone, bear children. Right-wing women, as Dworkin states, know that the little power they do have is in their sexual reproductive organs, and they use that as a bargaining chip to gain more power and to withhold power from others. They specifically discriminate against trans women because if they lose their biological power, they have nothing to offer the right, and then they risk becoming disposable. Post-2016, a lot of women became radicalized once trans men and women started becoming accepted more in the feminist movement and leftist spaces. Because some cis-het white women truly believe this idea that the only reason they're both subjugated and also important in society is because of their sexual organs, so therefore only they can be considered real women. And ironically enough, these women still see themselves as feminists. They just exclude trans people. They call themselves trans-exclusionary radical feminists, or TERFs, who claim to just have some concerns. They just want cis-het women to be able to speak. Some of their events are even called Let Women Speak. They believe that trans people aren't the genders they identify as, and also claim that they're sexually deviant and mentally ill. These women also hurt their own children by denying them life-saving, gender-affirming care. In all, TERFs are just right-wing women in liberal sheep's clothing. They claim they just have some concerns, but in reality they want to eliminate trans people from existing and live in a world where cis-het white women like themselves get to stay atop the patriarchal pyramid. They're not feminists, not even close, but they use this label to still be taken seriously and to cover up their true nature. You can't be a feminist and not support trans people. And nowadays, the TERFs barely hide their affiliation with neo-Nazi groups. They pat fellow Nazis on the back and protect them because it's free speech. They truly are feminazis. It's honestly vile, and though this seems like a fringe movement, it's sadly not. Fascism has exploded in the past decade around the world, and transphobia and homophobia has of course grown alongside it. It's no surprise that the books the Nazis burned first had to do with gender and sexuality. There are hundreds of anti-trans bills today being passed in various states, bills that include clauses where the state can take away children from gender-affirming parents, bills that make it illegal to medically transition, etc. And the biggest transphobe of them all, Ron DeSantis, is running for president next term. We went from the first president to say the word transgender to now having an out-and-proud transphobe run for the highest office in the land. But in 13 short years, the right mobilized themselves to do what they've always dreamed of. Turns out saying the quiet part out loud worked on men and women. And in the end, the worst part is this isn't even really about trans people. Like, it's about trans people because the right hates them, but the larger goal of all this is just to get more votes. The Conservative Party is just using trans issues to get more and more people on board with their larger fascist movement. They use trans issues in order to move center men and women right. And then these people still think they're in the center because the right has packaged all of this as just debate, as valid concerns, as just looking out for the children. And not enough people can see through this facade because the right frames their concerns as a question of morality, and no one wants to be called a bad person, so they throw logic out the window in favor of emotion. And this, of course, isn't the first time white cis-het women felt victimized by liberal and leftist politics. For example, Anita Bryant throughout her life claimed that gay men as well as lesbians were a threat to women and children and the sanctity of the family. In Natalie Wynn's video, she claims that some cis-het women feel threatened by gay men because gay men don't need women, and therefore cis-het women fear them. And like I stated before, the same fear is projected onto trans people and more specifically trans women. If trans women are women, then they believe as cis women they will become obsolete. Another reason Wynne states as to why right-wing women can't disavow the political structure that binds them is because they can't bring themselves to admit that the men in their lives are shitty or even have privilege. It's extremely painful for them to conceive that their father, son, or husband sees them and treats them as less than or even has more political power than them. So they turn their backs on liberal ideology that would make them see men in a more complicated light. As Dworkin states, the right gives women a place to put their anger other than on men. The men create foreign enemies to take the bullet. Women take the rage and contempt they feel for men who actually abuse them, those close to them, and project it onto others, those far away, foreign, or different. Because women so displace their rage, they are easily controlled and manipulated haters. Having good reason to hate, but not the courage to rebel, women require symbols of danger that justify their fear. The right provides these symbols of danger by designating clearly defined groups of outsiders as sources of danger. The right weaponizes women's anger by giving them enemies to hate, and not only that, but puts them in charge of other women and marginalized people. Women cling to the pyramid they sit on because they get to wield some power. It's the quickest and easiest way in theory to at least feel like they're in control. They get to be openly racist and classist and homophobic and transphobic. They get to indulge in the power the cis-het white men enjoy. They're happy to be used as concerned mothers when it's time to demonize the LGBTQ+ community, as long as it means that they don't get treated like them. They're fine with being used to kill and imprison black men and women. Better them than us, right? Lastly, there are marginalized women who uphold right-wing politics because financially it's lucrative. Even if they don't believe what they're saying and are subjected to abuse, they have the same mindset as the cis-het white women. If I'm one of the good ones, I'll be rewarded and it's better them than me. Lauren Chen, Candace Owens, and Blair White are all marginalized women who simp for alt-right politics because they want money. They know exactly what they're doing and have made a career out of it. Recently, Candace Owens was attacked by her own fan base for calling out a cis-het white alt-right personality because she rightfully stated that it's bad to abuse your wife. She should have defended spousal abuse, you see. Even the grifters aren't protected. Just like how at the end of the day, the cis-het white women won't be protected either. But they simply don't care. It's honestly sad to see people die on these hills, to be so deep in the hole that you just have to continue to dig because it's too late to backpedal. Some people I don't even think still believe in what they're saying, but now have no choice but to remain bigoted because they're embarrassed, and it would be almost impossible to rehabilitate their image. So now, whether they believe what they're saying or not, they just have to stick to the script until the end of their days. It's sad, but that's their own fault. What we need to focus on now is fighting back against these people who have already chosen to go down the wrong path. We have to protect the LGBTQ+ community, who are especially vulnerable at this time, and just show up and not let bigots slide because they're your family or friends. Make this a wedge issue in your own life. And don't waste time trying to change people's minds. Use that time instead to listen and educate yourself and stand up for people being persecuted right now. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this video and why women join the alt-right in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.